gentlemen, welcome back. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, the dynamic duo back together after a kind of a little bit of a hiatus. Special thank you to Ken Stomsky for filling in last week, getting us off. And Stomsky had pretty good numbers last week, Pete. It wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. So I'm going to jump off with a little bit of the Husky Nation. But before we do, Pete, your trip doing the World Series down there. I think I watched a little bit of the Bridgewater, Massachusetts team lose to New Hampshire yesterday. So I don't know if that was the same thing you were involved in, but tell us all about your trip, Pete.
Yeah, there's a whole mess of games going on. I did softball ages 8 through 18. So we did 57 teams playing on 8 fields over 3 days of pool play and then 3 days of bracket play.
Absolutely incredible.
A couple hundred games we spit out. And then I stayed to do the Babe Ruth experience for 11U 70 field, 70-foot diamond, and 9U Cal Ripken at the same complex. They're in their bracket play right now.
Wow.
So they're playing bracket play. I think they started bracket play today.
And you showed me a little bit of the facility.
Oh, it's beautiful.
What a setup.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
And that's so cool, really cool that these young people can get into a situation like that, a competitive situation like that, that's absolutely first class, run with the assistance of professionals like yourself, and really come out with an experience that they will remember for the rest of their lives. And so, Pete, we want to thank you for doing that because that's unbelievable. What else do you have there? Did you see anybody that's going to be in the major league soon?
Some of these little kids, there's some kids that can almost hit the ball out of the park at that age, and I was like, whoa, hello.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, In the Zone is back, folks. We are right here, right up in it, and it is a time of the year right now where in the NBA we're having a little bit of a lull with some things right now, although the Olympics is going on. But we did want to start off with a little NCAA Feed 'em Fish section, and we're going to jump right into it, folks. And we're going to give you what we were able to ascertain from what we were able to garner from attending practice of the Yukon Huskies in Gampel Pavilion on August 3rd. Pull it up right here. Here's Coach Hurley. He is absolutely the king of stores. And I'm going to ask you to bring that clip back for a second, Pete, when we're done. A little bit later because I wanted to show you what just happened right there. And here's the players coming out onto the floor. That was Alex Caraban that he walked by. And you can see in the stands, and this is what I wanted to start off with, Husky Nation got game. Husky Nation has big game. We're talking about August 3rd, Saturday morning, and there's almost 5,000 people there.
Insane.
It was absolutely incredible. And what you're seeing right there is what I'm going to refer to as I always say to my players, I say there's levels to this thing. And when I'm sitting right there in the front row. So I'm absolutely in the front row right there. And I could almost feel the energy coming off of Danny Hurley. That's how pumped he was. The players were pumped. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of it because I gave the practice several grades. And I went in and I was taking notes, very, very observant. I wanted to see and learn as a coach when you're back-to-back champions, go in and find out what they're doing and maybe replicate it, maybe add it to what you're doing so that your program improves. That was the intention of my visit. So I broke down their grading into 5 different categories. Team practice, it was only an hour, but there was some great intensity in there. So a good practice has these 5 components, if you ask me. All right, it has good energy, it has good communication, it has good accountability, it has good competitiveness, and it has good absorption. Okay, and I'm going to give them a grade in each one of these areas. The energy level of their coaching staff and their players was an absolute A+. Middle of the summer, they're all in shape, they're all ready to go, and they are absolutely focused on the task at hand. Communication, A+. They have a tremendous assistant coaching staff They have a number of support staff, managers, and everybody in the building is pulling, rowing in the same direction. So on the energy level, A plus. Communication level, especially from the assistant coaches, A plus. I heard what they were saying to them. I heard how they were teaching on the sidelines and what they were trying to inspire the young men to do. And this is high level. This is very high level. Accountability, it's an A, absolute A. I love the fact that when they don't do well, one of their teams was doing a drill and they didn't do it right. And then there was another group that got scored on 4 times in a row. Up the stands they go and down the stands they go. Even in front of 5,000 fans, there was accountability. And that's why they're winning, folks, because you got high-level accountability in that gym. I was excited to watch it. Competitiveness, absolute A. An absolute A as far as competitiveness. They're all very, very good players. There are no bad players on this team. And I think you're going to be surprised this year as to exactly who does emerge and become those good players and the championship players, because every single year they're in a reload position. Every single year they're grabbing players. But what was really prevalent to me while I was watching and observing is that there are a number of gentlemen that bought into this program and haven't gotten to play yet, but they're talented, they're ready, and they're going to be unbelievable in this upcoming year. That's my guess. Absorption, I gave it an A minus, B plus, because I think by purpose, Coach Hurley, the energy level where it was, there was some players that were having difficulty knowing where they should have been at that time. Some of them freshmen, but there were a few times when we saw some of the upperclassmen have a little bit of difficulty knowing exactly what spot to be in, and that'll take some time. But right there, that was the only really thing that I could say, is that it didn't look to me like everybody was on the same page right now, and I'm not sure they should be in August. Okay, let's go through their coaching staff, Pete, quick. All right, you have Coach Hurley. I alluded to him as the king of stores. He is absolutely a really great story, and has really emerged as one of the absolute kings of what we do in this college basketball business. Absolutely. But in stores, the way the crowd responded to him, the way that he walked in, calm, collected, but an energy level that you could almost feel, it was palpable. That's the king of stores right there, folks, and he's got it going on. I really think that this thing has levels. And right now we're talking about DH level. The rest of the country, the rest of the coaches in the country, you got to get up to DH level. And I know I'm putting a little bit of a target on his back, but I think he knows there's one there anyway. All right, the consigliere, the right-hand man, is Tom Moore. Coach Tom Moore got a mention from Coach Hurley, and the crowd went absolutely crazy for Coach Moore. They know his contribution. They know his acumen. They know his background and level of experience. Former head coach at Quinnipiac, great all-round guy, and has a MASCAC background out of Worcester State from the days that he was back in our league as well. But again, it was the head coach at Quinnipiac, and it really serves Coach Hurley well to have a consigliere, a right hand as experienced and as really amped up about the game as Coach Tom Moore. So now we go to the next assistant coach, is Kamani Young. And Kamani Young and I go back a really long way to Queens. He's a Queens basketball guru. Back in the day, we're talking about a lot of really good basketball in Queens. You had Kenny Smith, Mark Jackson, Kenny Anderson, just great guards back there. Kamani Young was there through all of it, and he is an absolute great story. I think he'll be a head coach someday soon if he chooses, but he is an absolute great recruiter. But what I was most impressed with him was his absolute ability to connect with the players on the floor in talking basketball with them, and able to talk to a young man about, okay, here's a screen, you need it to be over here, you didn't set it up right, you didn't do this right, but his ability to connect with them quickly, get in, get out, deliver his message succinctly, and then get back on, because their practices go up and down. There's not a lot of stoppage in this practice. And now we go to the third assistant coach, Luke Murray, absolute wonderful gentleman of the game. And this is the guy, I think, on this staff that you're going to see as a head coach very soon in the next couple of years. The success level on this staff, they're a great team. They really work together. But it was so real exciting to see the way that each coach had their role and how that was delineated and how they responded to the players and how they did. But up and down the boulevard, you saw Luke Murray interacting with all of the players at a very high level and delivering messages and delivering advice, sage wisdom on a basketball level. I think this young man is certainly ready to jump up and be a head coach. Okay, so now we got to talk a little bit about their players. All right, Pete, run that clip for me one more time because I want to show you exactly what happens here. All right, Danny Hurley knows exactly what he's doing. He comes out. There it is. Everybody's moving, shooting, doing some drills. That was by design. He waves to the crowd. He goes, now I want you to, if you can, Pete, as he turns the corner, stop it right here. Bang. All right, right there. That's Alex Karaban. Alex Karaban is the North Star of this UConn team. He's the guy that's going to be the mentor to all of the young players. He's the guy that's going to be relied on in clutch situations to take big shots, as he has before. But you're going to see an increased role for Alex Karaban and an absolute gentleman. The young man was an absolute gentleman. The young fans were really excited to see him. They were pumped up. They were calling his name from the stands. And, you know, even during practice, and I know he might get in trouble for it a little bit, he came over and gave a couple of high fives and really gave those kids something to enjoy for the day. But the reason I wanted to stop it here is because Coach Hurley is an absolute basketball genius. And right here, first get, as we go into the next season, when we're trying to repeat, we're trying to three-peat. Here it is right here. This is where it goes. He goes to Karaban, walks up behind him because he knows Karaban's his North Star. That's the first person he's going to talk to as he walks into the gym. There's an order to this. There's a pecking order to this. Alex Karaban is most likely captain. But look what happens when he passes Karaban. Karaban just falls down in laughter, gets an unbelievable laugh from his coach, and now he knows he's ready to lead. He's going to have a big responsibility. And don't forget for 1 second that there's pressure on these young men to do the three-peat. This hasn't been done in a really long time. There's pressure on these young men to do it. Here you see their dynamic stretching. Coach Hurley even running up and down with them, getting loose, high fives all around. It was palpable. It was absolutely palpable. But Karaban, make no question about it, he's the North Star. I'm not sure that he ever spends a moment in the NBA, Pete. I don't know if we'd have him on the draft board, but he's a leader of this team right here, and he's two-time champion. He's looking for three. He's looking for 3 rings, and we'll be calling him Ringo soon if he gets that third one. The point guard is going to be an interesting spot for this team. I really, really think this is going to be the most interesting spot because you have Hassan Diarra, Queens native. He's a great New York point guard. He is built. He can really get in the lane. He makes good decisions, and he's got experience. He's a young man who sat behind one of the gentlemen I'm talking about who did his time, sat behind some of the other greater players that have been in the program. And now he's also transferred in from Texas A&M, so he's got some really, really good background with him. I think that he'll probably go and be the starter, but they have, some pretty good players in that point guard position as well. I could see that happening. They have Novell from Philadelphia, Ahmad Novell, and they have Solo Ball, who also is a very good player. I think there's an old Pink Floyd song called Pigs on the Wing. It's one of a great off an album called the Animals album, and it's a great one. But we have Huskies on the wing here. We've got Huskies on the wing, and this might be the strength of their team. They have Jalen Stewart, Isaiah Abraham, Jaden Ross, and the young, very promising freshman Liam McNeely. And so you've got some really good depth there. You've got some great athleticism, and you've got some guys that you're going to hear about going, oh, my God, how did they have this guy? And, oh, my God, how did they have that guy? The bigs are really, really good. I'm going to give you this name right now. I'm going to tell you he's going to climb up our draft board very quickly this year. I watched him at the end of this year. He'll take on a much, much bigger role than he has in the past, and he will be one of the most dominant centers in the NCAA this year, Samson Johnson. And you are going to shake your head, scratch your head, and say, how do they keep doing it? How do they keep pulling these guys out who didn't play before, but they're unbelievable? It's culture. It's buy-in. And when I saw it face up, I could see exactly what's going on. They also have Yusuf Singare, another 6'11", long shot blocker, runs the floor tremendously, caught some great dunks, and really, really did some good stuff. Aiden Mahaney, is the transfer from St. Mary's. Much is expected out of Aiden Mahaney. And Leah McNeely was the other freshman who came in. But Mahaney is the transfer from St. Mary's. They had a lot riding on this young man. I saw a little bit of East Coast, West Coast, to be very honest with you. I thought he looked a tiny little bit lost. He's got to get his feet underneath him, got to get a little bit more comfortable, maybe get a little bit greater role definition. But right now, he looked like he had trouble physically out on the floor against some of their bigger players, and I think that's going to be a challenge going on. In the zone is right here, is ready to go. Are they going to be Big East champs next year, Pete?
I don't see why not. Now, what I saw, you were there, but although the practice was intense, the team was loose.
Yeah, they're still loose.
Right? Like
You said
that
it.
practice was intense.
You said it.
You see it.
Yeah.
But coach sets the tone, and coach was keeping it loose.
100%.
He wasn't barking at him. He was joking with him.
So, are they Big East champs? 100%.
Oh, yeah, I would say, yeah, that's pretty easy, yeah.
I think they're going to maybe even run through it. I don't know that they have a peer right now in their own league. Are they a Final Four team? Absolutely. Absolutely, they could go to the Final Four because of program culture, because of the way things are rolling right now. And they've got really good players at a lot of different positions. So when you watch their offense and you watch how they move, pass the ball, and move for each other, you're going to see it because it's just really, really something beautiful to watch. I think right now, are they up for the three-peat, Pete? Are they able to do the three-peat in the zone right here? After witnessing what I witnessed, and I haven't been to other places, Kansas, Arkansas, some of the other places that are supposed to have great teams, I got to say they're going to three-peat. They're going to do it. I think they're going to have a great shot to do it. Right now, people have them second, third in the country. I don't know why. I think that's a bit disrespectful. They're number one till somebody else says they're not number one, Pete.
Exactly.
Okay. In the zone, we're going to take you out right now and do, because this is popping up a little bit on social media. We've had some of them, we've seen some of them, and we want to deliver our attributables to you and give you exactly what we have as deliverables and tell you where we see things shaping up for the college season. Because, Pete, I know people are going to say this is crazy, but we're under 100 days until college basketball season. We're a good bit under it right now. Before you know it, they're going to be returning to school. Before you know it this month, you're going to have football returning to camp. That signifies the end of summer. Everybody's got to gear up, get ready, and then you're going to have these young men start to arrive on campus, practice, like you saw with UConn. Many of them are there now, attending classes, practicing, getting workouts with their team. So I thought that was really, really eye-opening for me because there's no mistakes in this world.
Coach, I was down at
mistakes in this
UNA.
world.
They were practicing 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
UNA basketball.
They have a pretty much wide open schedule.
UNA basketball was practicing, and the football team was also practicing.
Yeah, is that North Alabama?
Yep, University of North Alabama.
Yeah, it's all over now. I don't know what the restrictions are anymore. I don't know that they have any. So we're going to give you the Big East right up front here, right up in personal. Again, we talked about Connecticut, but then you got to figure out who's left, who's rest, because each one of these power conferences is going to be looking to represent themselves in the NCAA tournament with as many teams at large that they can get. Everybody's going to get that one champion from their league conference tournament that's going to go in. You're going to get it, and it's going to be your winner. But then you're going to fight for those 6, 7, 8 bids that these power conferences believe they should get. Some of them right now, because they're so large, you increase the number of bids that becomes realistic. So if you have a conference with 16, they want to get 8. When you got a conference now that has 17 and 18 teams, they want to get 9 and 10 teams in. And so this is what's going to lead to the dominance of the Power Fives and everybody else getting the second tier. And so I think you're going to see possibly a little bit more of that come with the new decision that came down out of the courts also. We're going to talk about that in a little while. But you're going to see, I think this is going to grow the bigs and keep them very healthy, and I think it's going to make life miserable for some of the people that just don't have all the resources that those big state conglomerate universities have with 40,000 students, 75,000 boosters. They just have a whole lot more to offer and to go to. when they want to tap resources. And
Yep.
we're talking about NIL resources. We're talking about 20 now to 22% of your total revenues from ticket sales and from media and all the other stuff. It's a mess, but at least the players are getting paid right now. And now, one of my big complaints about the NIL was that the schools weren't exactly having to put up their share for the players. Now it seems like that's been solved. I probably am a little bit happy about that, although I'm finding little joy in this whole thing right now, to be honest with you, when I look at the whole thing. But Marquette, we're going to put in number 2. We really like some of the returners they have, but as we alluded to before, replacing Tyler Kolek and Oso Ighodaro isn't going to be that easy. Shaka's got it going on over there. We'll see how they do. I like Creighton because I like Coach McDermott, and I like Kalkbrenner, but they lost a tremendous amount as well. They lost Trey Alexander. They lost Baylor Shearman, the number 30 pick, to the Celtics. That's a lot to lose because those gentlemen had been in the program for 4 years solid and had really, really grown into the program. And so a tremendous, tremendous loss. But I think Coach McDermott can keep it going. But I think also what you're seeing here is a lot of those jobs, some of them anyway, have changed hands at the bottom. Will DePaul be as bad as they have been now that they have a new coach and moving in a different direction? I don't think they will. Georgetown with Coach Cooley now after a couple of years, can they rise and get off the deck here? You have Butler now in that lower tier, at least what I'm calling that lower tier of the Big East. So we'll run through it, but I just don't see any of these teams in the Big East really because they don't have the big football programs. They're really struggling right now,
Right.
and they're having a lot of problem, and I think that's by design. We have St. John's at 4, Kadari Richmond, really big pickup for them from Seton Hall. I think that's going to help, but I don't think anything's going to really go on there that's any different than what's been going on. I don't see the great move. You lost Soriano, you lost some other players, Dennis Glover, you lost some people, and now what do you do in order to replace that? But you're still, it's hard for you to tell me that you're getting ahead when you're just replacing what you lost, or simply, just cleaning out with one group of players and then bringing in another group of players and then saying, yeah, we got ahead. I just don't see that. And when Pete and I talk about chemistry all the time, there's no way you can tell me that you're maintaining your chemistry because you're just not. St. John's at 4, Providence at 5. I like Villanova at 6. I'm kind of rooting for them. Neptune. It's rarefied air up there in Neptune, I guess, right now, because if Villanova really, really went quickly to make that higher after 1 year at Fordham University, and I think they're seeing that there's some learning curve getting up into the Big East like that and not having that great experience. I think that's been problematic. I'm hoping that Villanova can get going, but there's not a lot of indicators pointing that way. I'm sorry, people of Pennsylvania. Xavier, Georgetown, Butler, and DePaul. I see nothing from DePaul other than they had 13 players. They took all the players off the roster. Now they have 13 new players. So they have a new coach, a new direction. I get it, but I just don't know that it's that easy to do. So that's our Big East. In the Big 10, which is now the Big 18, they're just growing leaps and bounds. I think you have to go back and look at some of these and change the name of some of these conferences. You're called the Big 10 because you used to have 10 teams. You're called the Big 10 because you had 10 teams forever. Now you got 18. And the Big 18 doesn't sound that great. Okay, so Indy.
You know what? Just add 2 more and call it the Big 20.
It's coming.
I know.
It's coming. But the problem with that is you're going to run out of conference games to play. So if you have 20 teams, you got 19 teams to play. Are you going to play them all once? Are you going to split it up? Sometimes we play them. That's not a conference if you're not playing everybody in the league. You have so many that you play every third year. That's going on somewhere already. But let's get to it. The former Big Ten. Indiana, I like them. I don't know that they can climb as high as this, but I like Coach Woodson. I'm hoping because if it doesn't go well, I don't think that he'll be around. Oregon is new to the league. They have talent. They've got some players. I like them in the number 2 spot. I'm going to pick Maryland here, and I think this is going to surprise some people. I'm going to pick Maryland for 3rd here, and I'm going to pick Maryland for 2 reasons. Julian Reese and Derek Queen. Those are 2 really good big men up front. Derek Queen is one of the best freshmen coming in, and Julian Reese is kind of a guy who's played in obscurity there. But if I had to put a draft board up right now, I think I might have Julian Reese in my 1st round. I'm going with Rutgers 4th. I really like their freshmen. Had they been able to hold on to Big Cliff, who wound up going out on them to go to Alabama, which really helped Alabama. But if they were able to hold on to him, I think they would have had a really good chance maybe to win the league because their young talent is really exciting. But UCLA I have in fifth, brand new to the league. They're coming out of the West Coast, and now they're in the Big Ten. I think it's going to be a bit of an adjustment, but Mick Cronin's going to be under a little bit of heat this year to get it done, so I think he'll respond to that. Six, Purdue. Purdue's got a couple of new players that they picked up. They have a few other players that they have returning from the really good run to the finals this year, where they lost to the Huskies. But they're out of big Zach Edey right now. And I will give my friend Zach Edey a message because we in the zone had you number one. We'd love to have you come on the show, but I want to see, because I saw you sprain your ankle the other night in the summer league. You can't chase every block shot. You can't chase every block shot anymore. I know you're 7'5", but shot blocking's not a big thing in the NBA if you're going to turn your ankle every time you land. So you better learn to stay on your feet and use your body a little bit more. And again, keep the ball off the floor on your initial post move. You're going to be a whole lot better, especially in the NBA when it becomes bump and grind. All right, so I'm going to go Minnesota, Michigan State, and Iowa right next. Really good coaches, really good stuff, but I don't know how you're going to hold on with some of this, all this other stuff going around you. Wisconsin, Northwestern, Illinois probably a little bit higher, but they lost out on one of their good players. He left. It was probably their best player. Wound up going to Kansas State. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I don't know how they can hold on. I think they'll be okay. Ohio State, that was a strange hire, I thought, at the end of the year. Now they have USC and Washington in the league. I think they'll both struggle because they don't have great talent right now, and Washington is in the middle of a coaching change, and USC, they're going to have a tough time replacing Collier. Bronny James is gone. They had some things going on there right now, but the rug's been pulled up. And then I'm going to go Nebraska, Michigan, and oops, I hate to say it, Pete, but Penn State all the way down. When you got 18, when you have 18 teams, and you're going to be 18, looking up at all other 17, oh boy, that makes for a long year. It makes for a very long year.
That was the whole point of having all the conferences, is that you had a lot of outstanding teams spread out around the country.
When you hear, like, all right, I'm going to take you through the Big 12 next. When you hear the first 6 teams that are in the Big 12, you're going to be like, oh, my God, how is anybody going to survive that? And you're going to look at the big teams are going to struggle because they got to play each other.
Right.
And these are top 25 teams, all of them. And they might be top 15. And then you're going to say, okay, we still got to go on the road to some of these other places that aren't as good, but they're really good too. So it's going to be a really, really mosh pit of a league this year. Let's keep going with Houston until they, I like them a little bit like UConn. They've been there, they've done it, and somebody got to knock them off. But this VJ Edgecombe-led Baylor team with Norshard Ormir coming in as a transfer from Miami. They have the kid Roach who came in from Duke. They've got some really, really good transfers in there, and I think Edgecombe might be the best freshman in the country. I'm going to say it. Cooper Flagg's terrific, but I like Edgecombe a lot, and I think he's going to light this team up. Iowa State got a lot of people returning. They are the Cyclones, and they will blow the roof right off of your house. I have them third in the Big 12, but they could easily run first with the talent they have coming back. Great job out there. Great job out there by the coaching staff. Kansas in the 4 spot. Kansas. They're usually right up there at top. They're right up there, perched up in the big part of that league right there. They're looking about 4th, and I could see them going lower than that because right underneath them I got Arizona and Kansas State. Those are 2 really good teams as well. Texas Tech. And I'm going to throw Arizona State in there. Bobby Hurley, I'm going to say that they got to have a good year. This is going to be their first year in the Big 12. And, oh, my God, talk about, having trouble in your job a little bit where, the program maybe not the greatest, and not supporting you, and then all of a sudden they say, hey, we're joining the Big 12. Now you're going to go in and it's going to get worse. So I hope that they're ready for that. Cincinnati, I've got after that. And then look at what happens here in the back end of this league. So take the front of it. Houston could be top 3. Baylor could be top 10. Iowa State could be top 10. Kansas could be top 10. Arizona could be top 15. It's unbelievable. And then go over here and say, okay, now that's the rough and tough part. Now you got to go to Utah. You got to go to TCU. You're going to play BYU. It's unbelievable. Colorado really lost a lot. I'm way down on them. UCF, I don't know if they can hold that all together. They got a lot of problem people over there that have been in trouble and had some difficulties. If they can pull it all together with all of those things moving in variable, I'd be surprised. West Virginia and Oklahoma State, they're in trouble. They got to get better. Coaching changes, coaching maneuvers, but this takes time. And in this environment, you might get lucky, but you're also not going to see a lot of people that are willing to jump in on last place teams. You're going to see that hurt recruiting significant amount because they think it's going to hurt their draft chances, and it very well might. All right, so ACC, I thought they had evened it out, but I think they have 17 teams, Pete. That's a bit of an oddity. That's a bit of an oddity to me. If I could be wrong, but you normally have, the royalty, the blue bloods, the North Carolinas, the Duke, who have been really, really the top of this league for a long time. I'm going to go way out on a limb, and I'm going to call Pittsburgh in the number one spot this year, despite they lost Bub Carrington, who's going to be a very good player in the NBA. He was a first-round draft pick. This team's pretty much intact, and in the ACC, that's kind of a big deal right now. If your team is intact and you have program integrity and you're able to move forward with the same players, with the same set of experiences and the same culture, you have a better shot right now, especially in this market right now. So I'm going to pick Pittsburgh to be number one. I'm not sold 100% on Duke yet. I don't know that they have the great guard play that they're going to need. And North Carolina, I have them third. I have Duke second. I have North Carolina third. But I could see North Carolina getting in trouble this year. They could get washed up. They have R.J. Davis back. They have Elliot Cadeau. They have a very good backcourt, but I could see them having some problems. Virginia, number 4. Yep, I think they'll be in there. I think they'll be pretty good. SMU and Wake Forest next. I think SMU's new to the league, but they have a new coach, new stuff going on, and I think they'll be okay. We got NC State right off the Final Four run. They had a great run this year, but I don't know how duplicatable that's going to be. I like Syracuse. There's some good recruiting stuff going on with Syracuse right now. We'll talk about Clemson in the 9 spot. You bring in California from the West Coast, they're going to go in 10. They could go a little higher, but I think losing Jalen Tyson in the NBA, that's a big one. He averaged 20 points a game last year, but I think they're going to be okay. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Miami. Right now, Virginia Tech is going to be one of those schools that's going to have a really tough time keeping up in this market. Georgia Tech, same thing. They were once a glory team under Bobby Cremins, Kenny Anderson, the lethal weapon 3, the whole thing. But right now, they're falling and they're having trouble getting up. And in this market, nobody's going to get off your neck and let you just get up. You're going to have to fight your way to the top. Not sure that they have everything that you're going to need down there, but we'll see. Miami, 13. They have Jaleel Bethea, but losing Norshard Amir, Wilga Poplar, they've lost some people. Isaiah Wong is in the pros now. They've lost some of the key components that kept them going for a really long time. I love Jaleel Bethea. I think he's one of the best freshmen in the country this year. I just don't know that they have enough to go around him. Florida State, Stanford, Boston College, and Louisville. Boston College is in real trouble. They lost a lot of people. Louisville's trying to get up off the deck after being there for many, many years, and it's not really helping when you keep changing coaches, keep changing players, keep changing all the stuff. When you're trying to get up, you're more inclined to keep slipping when that occurs. All right, we're going to the SEC, Pete. It's unbelievable, but this is right now. When you hear this conference, you're going to go, oh, my God, who's going to win this thing? Alabama, number 1. Sears and Roebuck. Mark Sears, one of the best guards in the country. He will lead this team. They'll be very good. And they signed Big Cliff Amoroyi from Rutgers, who's one of the better big men in the portal, and they signed him. I think that's really, really going to help them up front. I have Auburn number 2. They could break out the broom on you, and that's Johnny Broom. He returned to Auburn for another year, 6'11". We'll have him early on the draft board. He'll be up in the first round somewhere, but he's back for Auburn, and they got a very, very good team. They brought in J.P. Pegues from Furman. They have a very, very good balanced team returning as well. But bringing back Johnny Broom, the big guy, is really, really huge. Tennessee, they're 3rd. They lose Dalton Connect, but I think they're going to be okay. I like Barnes a lot. I like his program. I like the integrity, and I love what they're doing. Mississippi State. Mississippi State's going to be pretty good, folks. Keep an eye on them. They got some talent on this team, and they got one of the best players in the country. South Carolina, they lost Michie Johnson. I know, but I really like what they did this year, and I like the way their program's pointed. I'm going to keep them right there. But I like Texas A&M in that spot, too. Texas A&M is sixth. They're going to be loaded. You're going to have Buzz Williams. There's Buzz down in Texas A&M. They also have one of the best emergency management people in the country that they stole from us at Westfield State, Tom Kettle. So Texas A&M's got it cooking, and they're cooking it in the kettle. Kentucky and Arkansas, 8 and 9. I like Pope a lot as the coach. I really do. I think he'll turn Kentucky around. Their lineup's not great right now, but they did bring in one of his players from BU that we're going to talk about, Jackson Robinson, who's terrific. I really like him. Arkansas, everybody's pumped about this team. They got Boogie Fland. They brought in John L. Davis from FAU. Calipari's got a new life. He's like a cat, man. He's got more lives than a cat. But he's out in Arkansas with a big budget, big money, and they've already signed Darius Acuff for next year, point guard, which kind of signals that they may not think Boogie Fland is going to be around. Boogie may boogie is the word. Okay, so
do we have to get up the Portal Potty graphic for that?
I think we can do without it, but it will certainly be up. Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma, these teams, Oklahoma, Porter Moser, Sister Jean, they ran that Final Four run and then go to Oklahoma, and you're getting bounced around down there in the SEC, and going to be rough, going to be tough to turn around. There are some schools that are football schools, man, and it's hard. It's hard to run a basketball program at those schools. Mississippi, this team could go higher. This team could go a little higher. LSU, Missouri, and Vanderbilt, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. I would say that the new coaching staff at Vanderbilt has a really good budget to work with. I hope they were able to load up and get something going there. But that league is just brutal. Brutal. Yeah. Okay, Pete, we're in under 100 days. And I wanted to, without further ado, we're going to bring you something to get excited about in this upcoming basketball season. One of the things that I like is that early on in the season, you get some marquee matchups. They'll be, whether they be in the Baha Mar tournament or in the Maui Invitational or any of those really nice resort spots that they go to, you're going to see some really good basketball. And I wanted to give you a couple of games here just to whet your appetite, just to get you excited, just to get you as pumped as we are and as pumped as the UConn Huskies and Coach Hurley are. If we can all get that pumped, we're going to be living in a different nation, folks.
True
I'll
enough.
tell you that right now. Okay, so off the get, right now you got Kansas and Duke on 11/26. Marquee game. That's not the beginning of the season. You're going to see some other games before that, but that's a really, really good marquee game. You're going to have Cooper Flagg going up against Hunter Dickinson, the young unproven freshman going up against the old dog from Kansas who's been around and had not a games under his belt. I think you're going to see this Duke team really, really come out and be a little mercurial at first, but if they can catch it the right way, especially on the defensive end, I think they'll be okay because they got a ton of talent, and this Kansas team has a ton of talent, and that's going to be a great game to start off. All right, Alabama, North Carolina on 12/4. Alabama, where everybody else is running and hiding with their schedule, everybody else is Cupcake City. I like the way Alabama's going. They're taking on North Carolina early, and they're taking on Houston early, and I think that's a really good way to go for Coach. Their league is brutal, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to win those tough games, and you're going to have to be there, so I like it. I like it a lot. Kentucky and Gonzaga. I believe that game is going to be played in Madison Square Garden, or maybe it's going to be up in Gamble. I'm not sure. 12-14. That's going to be an unbelievable game. I have both of those teams in my preseason top 25, top 5. I have Gonzaga and UConn in the top 5, and I think that's going to be some battle. Houston and Alabama on the 26th of November. You're going to be right around Thanksgiving. You're going to be watching some football. You're going to be having a turkey. You're going to be loading up, and you're going to go, oh, my God, look at this. We got Houston, Alabama. You're going to love it. You're going to love it, folks. Gonzaga, UCLA on 12/28. Great game. Here's one that I'm going to be really, really excited about. Baylor against Connecticut on 12/4. That's going to be an unbelievable matchup, folks. Put it on the calendar now. Put it down right now because you're not going to want to miss that game. That's going to be the NBA future. You're going to be watching that in that game. You're going to be watching that in that game. Duke and Kentucky, 12-12. I think that's going to be an unbelievable matchup. Kansas and North Carolina, 11-8. That's two of the biggest blue bloods you can ever get going, ever shake a stick at. And then you got Auburn and Houston. Oh, that's going to be a dogfight. That is going to be an absolute big barn burner down in there because those are going to be two very, very good teams. Right now, although Houston has been incredibly successful, and I'm not betting against Coach Sampson and his defense anytime soon, this Auburn team's loaded, and Johnny Broome might be the difference in that game. Arkansas, Michigan, that game is at Madison Square Garden, 12-10. Dusty May, the new coach at Michigan. Calipari going in with his team. Boogie Flanders from New York, so it's going to be a party. They're going to enjoy it. Creighton and Kansas on 12-4. The clash of the Titans. Kalkbrenner versus Dickinson. Two 7-footers. Both going at it. Both going to be looking to be NBA first-round picks. And I would say that both of them are going to be NBA first-round picks. So put that one on your calendar as well. And then you got Purdue and Alabama on 11-15. All right, Pete, we got this thing that we're talking about, house money. All right, here's the settlement that we talked about. Okay. The house money settlement allows schools to pay players directly. 22% of the average revenue is what they're talking about. So the average revenue at Alabama versus the average revenue of LIU.
Creighton.
Yeah, it's gonna be, and this is from ticket revenue, ticket sales, media rights, and sponsorships.
So it's now pro league.
It's basically
it's a pro league.
It's the ABA. It's the old ABA. It's a pro league, no doubt. Been a pro league for a couple of years now, but now it's putting the onus on the campuses to come up with the money where the campuses used to just absorb that money. And so what I'm really interested to see is how are you really going to talk about revenue and 22%?
Weren't these schools losing, a lot of these big schools losing money on these programs?
That's what we talked about. And so 22% of what? How are you going to measure that?
Right.
And what's going into the formula when you say, okay, we have revenue and then we have expenses? You can talk about revenue all day long, but if your expenses exceed your revenue, you're losing money. So I don't know where you're going to get an NIL package when you're losing money. I don't understand that piece of it. I'm sure that's something that will be something to be vetted out. But that's, 20, 22, to somewhere in that percentage of a power conference budget. And it's going to be unbelievable. Now you're talking about athletic directors and other people, I'm sure attorneys and all of these other people now sitting there and having discussions with coaches about here's your budget, here's your salary cap, here's who you can give money to, and here's the other piece of it. They left the door wide open, Pete, because you're talking about 22% of total revenue. That doesn't mean you can't get your money from the street either. That's not going to stop Caitlin Clark from being in a Gatorade commercial and getting a $20 million contract from Gatorade.
Yeah.
So if they want to put some of these young men into commercials and use their name, image, and likeness, they can still do that as well. So this is an absolute Wild West show. You'd think this would have made it a little bit better, but it really didn't. What you're having now is schools and conferences talking about private equity coming in and taking a stake of the program. Kenny Blakeney got himself in a little bit of trouble this week. He's the head coach at Howard University, and he said he was offering up a 33% stake in the Howard men's basketball program. Now, to my knowledge, 33% of nothing is still 33%. So I'm not sure how much money Howard basketball is making, but they want private equity people to come in and give them a load of dough, and then they're going to have a stake in the program. They'll be able to sell part of the program. The people at Howard said, Coach didn't talk to us.
The muscles in my neck are twinging.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
And the people at Howard came out and said, yeah, Coach didn't talk to us about that. So we'll see how that goes. But that's the future. That's what I fear is the future. Okay, Mark Pope, the new coach at Kentucky. All right, we're going out with this one, Pete. Pope is dope. All right, and that's when young people talk about things. Dope, that's a good thing. Okay, they think that means cool. That means that he's a good guy. All right, here's why I think Pope is dope, because Pope is going out and they're going to have an open tryout on August 30th at the University of Kentucky. So if you've been a kid that's dreamed all of your life about making a team, didn't get recruited, wound up going to Kentucky anyway, Coach Pope's going to open a gym. You're going to have an open tryout, and you're going to have a chance to make the Kentucky team. I think that's absolutely cool. I think that's what college basketball should be about. And in my opinion, in the zone, we say
Is this a way to combat the portal
Pope is dope. It's a way
around the portal?
to it's a way to it really is. I love the way your brain thinks,
Because
man.
now you have almost like in the NBA undrafteds. Now, so okay, you didn't get drafted, so you didn't get picked in a portal. Now, if you're a top travel player or something, you just go to Kentucky
You now can and also
because you don't need the scholarship with NIL,
and
right? You don't need a
they're
scholarship,
going to go right around it.
right?
They're going to go around it. They'll
The coaches
cover
have already found a way to go around it.
So you say, okay, the cost of attendance is $50,000. You have to come up with $50,000. So your NIL deal is $250,000. You have to take care of the tuition. So you have $200,000 to play with. You're going to get $50,000, and that's the way around it. But they
There you
also
go.
just went from 12 to 15, from 13 to 15 scholarships for men's basketball. So they're just adding a lot of expense on the expense side here too as well. I just don't know how it's all going to work out. But I think
insane.
when you have a printing press, things have a tendency to work out. So, AJ DeBanza, this was interesting. You had Cooper Flagg, the number one player in the country. He went to IMG Academy, but he's from Maine. He's originally from the state of Maine. Number one player in the country from the state of Maine. That's happened how many times in the past? I could probably tell you zero. 0 times has that ever happened in the past. Okay? So it was something of an anomaly, but it also says something about New England basketball that's exploding. And so now you go from Cooper Flagg in the 24 class to the 25 class of AJ DeBanza. And this is what I wanted to show you, Pete, and some of the stuff you've been talking about. This is the Brockton Bomber. Okay, he's Massachusetts' own. He's a great player. He's going to be a good pro. Everything pointing in that direction. He's going to be terrific. Now, he just came out with 7 schools, and I'm going to give you the 7, but it's going to be surprising to you that some of these schools are on the list, but they're on the list because they can compete now NIL-wise. They can compete now because if you're a lower level Power 5 conference that's trying to get something done, trying to draw some spark, and you got a $2 million allowance for your program, you give him 1.5 and see if you can get the best player in the country to come to your program and let the chips fall where they may. You got the best player in the country. It's a risk, but that's what some of these younger
Isn't that they're
programs.
forcing them into though?
It certainly is, and if you're smart, it's going to be about attribution. How are you going to spend your dollars? How are you going to apportion your money? And when you come to that realization that somebody can sit there and who never was a good basketball program before, a Northwestern, a Vanderbilt, some of the other schools out west, that Oregon State and some of these other programs that have been struggling, if they get the right NIL money together, they're going up. They're going up the ladder. So here's his schools: Alabama, Auburn, Baylor, BYU, Kansas State, and UNC. BYU and Kansas State got no business being in there with a pro prospect, Division I, number one player in the country. Those schools have no business being in there, but they're right there. Guess who's not there? Duke. Guess who else isn't there? Arkansas. I was very, very surprised by that. Okay, while we're on recruiting, you have the Boozer twins, all right? And here's a little bit of way you can kind of decipher things. When you have twins, generally they like to stay together. It's not unheard of that they would break up, but generally the twins like to stay together. And for the whole time that I've heard this, obviously Duke has to be in the picture because their dad played at Duke. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to Duke because Duke's getting everybody. And so when you get a program that's getting everybody, there can be some turnoff to somebody who's not everybody. And so the Boozer guys might have said, like, I don't know if there's room for us at Duke. The dad might be pushing Duke, but they're from Florida. And so Miami has said to it have a really good punch on these two, but now we're into a whole nother ball game. So here's Cameron Boozer's 8. All right? Arkansas, Duke, Florida, Florida State, Kentucky, Miami, Michigan, UNC.
All right, I gotta run this clip.
Chip, you know what? You just made the list. Oh no!
Oh, here we go.
That's the one thing is that his brother Caden has the exact same list, but he don't have Michigan. So
It is amazing to me that these kids are putting out their own list instead of being recruited. They used to be recruited. Now they're putting out their list to say, "You come to me."
And what you're watching is that NIL money gets sliced up like a pizza.
But have you seen the complete seed change in this?
It's unbelievable. Nobody can wrap their arms around it. You've seen it nationally,
Yeah.
in our own politic, and now you're seeing it. It's hitting everywhere. It's absolutely hitting everywhere. It's unbelievable. So here's some signings of note. And as I said, you look at this. When you look at certain things, you can kind of garner some other things from that certain thing. For example, Darius Acuff, one of the best guards in the country, has signed with Arkansas Coach Calipari's program. Now, when you get a signing like that, you say, but they have Boogie Fland, who's an unbelievable guard, and that's the same position. Do they know something that we don't know, which says Boogie may be on the boogie? Okay, is he one and done? Is he going to go NBA? Is he turning right away? Because you're looking at Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, Jaleel Bethea, VJ Edgecombe. That most likely are one and dones. They're most likely going to be in the NBA draft next year. And so you're looking at some of the best young freshmen, but they're coming out of there just as fast as they're going in. So it's going to be an interesting to see who can kind of handle all this sea change. And maybe that's why Calipari's signing the number 10 player in the country, Darius Acuff, because they know something's going on. Sadiq White, IMG, a ton of talent down at IMG. They're really ruling the roost right now in the recruiting landscape. They're down at IMG, and Mount Verde, is another one down in Florida. But here's the thing that's going on that I think could happen. Syracuse, Coach Autry, he's a Bronx Bomber. I coached against him when he was a point guard at Talentine, and so I'm rooting hard for this guy and his program. And Syracuse, I think, might have been able to make a move here and turn the right corner as to get back to where they used to be. I hope, because I love Syracuse and I love to see them get back where they were. Sadiq White was signed, the number 20 player in the country is signed with Syracuse already. And then there's also the possibility floating around that one of the best guards in the country is a gentleman by the name of Kiyan Anthony. And Kiyan Anthony happens to be Carmelo Anthony's son. And so Carmelo Anthony played at Syracuse, donated his money very generously to Syracuse. So if they were able to get Sadiq White and bring in Kiyan Anthony, you're talking Syracuse is going to be back. Syracuse is going to be moving in the right direction. LZ Harrington, I bring up his name. He's a young man from California. I bring this up. It's the last signing we'll discuss here, but LZ Harrington is listed as the number 32 player in the ESPN Top 100. Pretty good evaluation generally, the Top 100 by ESPN. He's going to Harvard, Pete. He's going to Harvard.
There you go.
Okay, that's a great signing. Great signing for Coach Hamilton.
I guess they'll win the Yankee League.
The Patriot League or the Ivies.
They're an Ivy.
They're
They're an Ivy.
Yeah.
That's right.
I guess so. We have about 8 minutes.
Yep.
All right. So I wanted to give you some impact transfers. We have some NBA stuff. We can actually hold that maybe for next week, or we'll get to it in an 8-minute. But here are some of the impact transfers that everybody's talking about in college basketball. These are gentlemen that are going to come into your program and hopefully be the guy, be the lead player, be the leading scorer, be the rebounder, be the shot block guy. And so some of these gentlemen also, you would sit there and say, okay, maybe they're just a piece, an addition, but I'll let you guys make up for yourselves. John L. Davis was listed as number 1. He was at Florida Atlantic. He's going over to play for Coach Calipari at Arkansas. Like I said, they have Boogie Fland, DeJuan Wagner. They have a pretty good lineup right there. Cliff Amorie from Rutgers. We've talked about him. He's going to Alabama, and with Alabama's guard play and with him blocking shots, keeping it real in the middle, they're going to be really, really tough. They could be the number one team in the country right now. Kadari Richmond went from Seton Hall to St. John's. He was listed at number 3rd. A.J. Storr from Wisconsin over to Kansas. That's going to be huge for Kansas because it's good guard play. And also you have Norshard Amir, previously mentioned, the Miami big man, 6'10". He could be a pro. I want to see more of him this year, but he's going over to Baylor to play with VJ Edgecombe and the young man Roach from Duke. Baylor's loaded, folks. Baylor's loaded. One of the best big men in the country, I think, Oumar Ballo, was at Arizona, wound up going and playing for Coach Woodson at Indiana. It's one of the reasons I'm excited about Indiana in the Big Ten, because they have Oumar Ballo, they have Mackenzie Mbako, they have some really good players on that team, and I think they might be ready to turn the corner. Coleman Hawkins was a gentleman who played at Illinois. I can't understand why he would leave Illinois and go to Kansas State, but he did. Illinois could have been back. They lost Terrence Shannon, but Illinois could have come back maybe and competed for a Big Ten title. Losing Hawkins and him going to Kansas State really, really hurt. Jackson Robinson, this is why Kentucky fans should be excited. He followed his coach from BYU, Coach Pope, all the way over to Kentucky. He's proven he's a great wing player, probably looking at him somewhere in the late first round as well, but I think Kentucky fans are going to be excited about him. And as we've aforementioned, I think Kentucky fans are going to be excited about the way Coach Pope runs his offense. The BYU offense this year was terrific. And if they get the same of that in Kentucky, I think Kentucky fans are going to be reignited and excited about bringing home one of their own. And this young man can coach. I think he can coach pretty good. So Pop Isaacs, Texas Tech, going over to Creighton. That's a big pickup for Creighton. Great Osabor. He was at Utah State. He's going out to Washington. That might save Washington. It might. They're ready. They're probably not going to have a great year, but that might save them. We'll see. Jeremy Roach from Duke to Baylor. That was huge. A huge loss for Duke. If they had returned Roach with some of the young players that they have coming in, I think you could put them almost at number 1. But they really, really are going to miss this young man. And going to Baylor, it's the richer getting richer. You got Edgecombe, you got Roach, you got Orchard Amir. That's a pretty good run right there. JT Toppin, he was at New Mexico with Richard Pitino Jr., and now he's going over to Texas Tech. I think Toppin is probably a top 15 pick in this year's draft. Michi Johnson, South Carolina, he's going over to Ohio State to play for Coach Diebler. We'll see. Aiden Mahaney, we mentioned him before. St. Mary's, he's playing for UConn right now. He can shoot the basketball. I think he'll settle down. But the physicality of that practice really, it was staggering to me that he had as much trouble in that practice as he did. But that's just a credit to UConn because their guys are unbelievable. And J.P. Pegues, he's going to Auburn, going to be a big pickup for Bruce Pearl. And he is also a former Furman player. All right, we're going to run into some NBA fish here. We've got 3 minutes. We're going to try and beat the clock. We got a couple of things to report. Lauri Markkanen is a really talented player. He plays for the Utah Jazz. Probably the most talked about prospect in terms of being traded, being included into a deal. He wound up signing and re-signing with Utah, which I'm happy for, because if he didn't, I don't know what becomes of Utah, their program right now. I mean, he's a star, and he's been a good player for them. He took $47.6 million a year and got a pretty good deal. Jared Allen for the Cavaliers has re-signed with the Cavaliers. He took a 3-year, $91 million extension. So he's getting $30 million a year, but that was an extension. So now he's on the books for 5 years, $131 million. Pretty good move by the Cavaliers to lock up Donovan and to lock up this young man, Jared Allen. Russell Westbrook, the mercurial Russell Westbrook. He's been in as many cities as Delta right now, but he keeps moving, he keeps bouncing. And guess who took him, Pete? The Nuggets. I think that could be a big pickup for the Nuggets. I like Russell Westbrook. I know he's been maligned, but I like the way he plays. I like his intensity, and I understand his limitations, but I think on that Nuggets team, he might be okay. Tyrese Maxey from the Philadelphia 76ers, they just locked it in. They said, we have Embiid up top. We brought in Paul George. They just locked in Tyrese Maxey, 5 years, $200+ million deal. He's a $40 million man right now. Chris Paul is joining the Spurs. And I think that this is interesting. Chris Paul certainly on the last leg of his career and closing it down, but going in with Victor Wembanyama, going to be a role, going to be a model, going to be a mentor, going to do all of that really, really good stuff that he will do. And he's been through a lot of battles. He's going to make good reads. He's going to get the ball to the right people. I think that was an interesting pickup by the Spurs. I think that moved them up the ladder a little bit. Okay, we got 1 minute left, but we got Klay Thompson on the move from the Warriors. Is he going to be Klay Thompson or is he going to be Klay Pigeon? I don't know, but he's going to the Mavericks. Isaiah Hartenstein. They poached my Knicks on this one. I loved Hartenstein. I thought he brought a lot of heart and some steam to the Knicks, and I thought he was pretty good. But the Dallas Mavericks, the Thunder, OKC Thunder, I've picked him up, Coach Daigneault. They have a really, really good young team. 1/3 of their minutes were played this year, OKC Thunder, with at least a first or a second year player, a rookie or a sophomore. Unbelievable. Bol resigns with Phoenix. I got to be honest with you, I didn't even know he was there. And Nick Claxton, this is big for the Nets. Nick Claxton is going to re-sign with the Nets and stay there. He's their big man. About the only player they got left, Cam Thomas. After the Bridges trade, the Nets really have closed out everything and really kind of pointing towards the future with draft picks. But it's rough to say to your fans, we'll see you in 5 or 6 years. So we'll see what happens down there. But keeping Claxton keeps them out of the basement, I think, of the NBA. They're not going to be very good, but it'll keep them out. Pete, unbelievable.
Coach,
we're back, and it was unbelievable to be back with you.
All right, before we go,
Yes,
I got
sir.
something from the World Series for you.
All right.
Check out this clip. This that happened when we were setting up for the 9s and 11s for their opening ceremonies. Watch the left side of the screen.
Oh,
Now watch the guys running after it.
that's unbelievable. They could have brought my neighbor Terry Regan in to do that, and that thing wouldn't be flying around like that. He'd have that thing anchored down, I'll tell you right now.
Better than that,
Was it windy?
not really, no.
Wow.
But look what happens when you go over here, and about a couple seconds later, this is actually pretty cool. You'll see it as it exits the field. It starts kicking up something when it gets past the field, and you'll see it kick up just about now. Let's see. We had a dust
Oh,
up,
yeah.
a little mini tornado.
Wow. And it's clear blue.
Yep, clear blue sky.
Clear blue. It's unbelievable. Pete,
That apparently made SportsCenter. Somebody said they saw that on SportsCenter.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
It's better than what's normally on SportsCenter these days. So, Pete, we're back, and we're locked in. We'll see you next week, folks, and we're going to have lots to cover. But, again, we're going to hit some other practices here, and we're going to grab some guests coming up for you. So have a great week. We'll see you next week. You're in the zone, baby.